Okay, welcome back to the show, and I've got two guests on the show today, both with the one common goal. We are here today to talk about this book, Blood, Sweat, and Cheers: The Story of the Bushwhackers. It's Bushwhacker Luke and John Crowther. Guys, how are you doing today?
Very good, thanks.
Very good there, mate. Very good, Morris. And how are you today, mate?
I'm good. We were just discussing the weather. It's nearly minus 4 degrees over here Celsius at the moment, so it's pretty cold over here.
We just had a bloody storm come through here. Not a bad one, but it was pretty winds and all that BS.
Yeah, we're having our Florida winter. It's going to dip down, as we said earlier, to about 72 degrees. So we'll be freezing Floridians.
The weather is pretty wild out there, isn't it, at times?
Yeah, it does. Well, at least we're not in hurricane season anymore.
Yeah. Guys, look, we're here to talk about the book predominantly today. So obviously this covers the whole Bushwhacker's career, like 40 years. How did this come about, Luke, and how did you become involved, John, and how do you two guys know each other firstly, I suppose, is the best question to ask.
Well, I met John at Comic Cons, comic conventions.
Yeah.
And then we got to talk, and of course, he was doing comic books. He's been doing comic books of the wrestling stars for many years. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Jake, and who else? Quite a few different characters.
Yeah, Bruno, Rocky Johnson, a lot of those guys.
Excellent.
And all of a sudden, I've been going to do a book. I've been talking to my good friend George Napolitano for years. George was a photographer for the WWF in the 70s for Vince Sr. And he's doing the programs for him. And he's put a lot of books out too, but mainly photography books. You know what I mean? Anyhow, I got to talk to John, and here we are. And after 2 years or a year and a half of doing phone calls, three-way with Bush, John, and myself, we did it for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of stuff down on that. And John, after every session, John put it down from a microphone down on paper and then edited it. And there it is. Blood, Sweat, and Cheers.
Yeah, like Luke said, I've done a lot of comics for heavy metal, for a lot of wrestlers, things like that. And COVID hit, and Luke and I had known each other already for a couple of years, just being on the convention circuit together.
Yeah.
And he asked me, I always get a kick out how I'd like to write a real book. So so we did a real book, a prose autobiography that, like you mentioned earlier, it covers, it's 372 pages covering from their early days. I think when all the way to when they were born, but all of their incarnations, be it the New Zealand Kiwis, be it the sheep herders, or be it the Bushwhackers, it's all in there.
In 50 years, 1966 to nearly 2023, it's more or less 50 years till we went from 66 to 2015 was actually 50 years of our lives is in this book.
Yeah. And was writing a book, Luke, something that you ever considered before, long before this, or were you ever writing stuff down?
I was thinking about it with George Napolitano, but George is busy doing photos and that, and he's retired. He's done a lot of stuff for me. So, and John was biting at the bit to do a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a credit to George too. He did write a foreword for us, and the photo you see on the cover of the book, George graciously allowed us to use that photo that he took back when they were the sheep herders for our cover. So he did have a part in the book too.
Excellent. So, like, you guys kind of put this together then during when the world was kind of upside down and stuff like that. Did you actually meet in person at any time during making this book? Obviously, you two guys kind of live close together, but was a lot of it done online?
Yeah, I mean, we would, if you've heard of the thing WhatsApp, we would,
Yes.
like Butch would laugh and call it, we're going to do our three ways. So basically, like Luke said, every Wednesday night for about a year and a half, we would hook up and do a three-way chat, just like the three of us are doing right now. With Luke, he's a little south of me near Clearwater. I'm up near Daytona Beach. And then Butch, obviously he's in New Zealand. He hasn't been to the States in quite a few years. And we would talk like this for about 2 hours. I tried to write everything down the first night we did it, and I realized that's not going to work. So from that point forward, I got a little recorder, and I would record. We would just talk about their lives and get into different stories, and I'd transcribe it and turn it into book format the next morning.
Yeah. Did you guys try and write this chronologically, or would some like memories and different things kind of pop into your heads every now and then? You'd be like, shit, I got to take that down, even if that was, say, 1992 or whatever,
Yeah, well, Luke can kind of speak to that, but a lot of what we do is I would just start, except for the parts about their early lives, which I did individually with them. I just would start with their career, and we just talk, like you said, chronologically from their early years right up until, honestly, their introduction into the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, which came after the WWE Hall of Fame. So it kind of flowed really nice. And I think Luke even mentioned to me once that as they're talking, a lot of their memories would come back to them because we're just having these discussions and, they remember another guy or another event. And so it really does flow very naturally.
Yeah. You go ahead, Luke.
I think now with different years that come up, there's a lot of events we may have missed or situations. This book's more about situations behind the scene, and that when you start thinking about it, there's things that we missed, but we got a lot of main stories in there. But still, there's a lot to be said. There could be a lot more involvement in it. But
so
they try to put it together a bit different than other guys' books. Not so much on the wrestling side, but more on the stories behind the scenes.
Yeah, like the inner workings of things. People.
That's what the fans want to hear today. They can watch all the wrestling and that, but they actually want to talk and ask you questions about this situation, that things that came up, especially the scandals and all that.
Yeah. There's plenty. Even the scandals from back in the day are kind of prevalent now again. I was actually part of the Vice TV documentary on Vince the other night. They took a little snippet from one of my podcasts with a guy that Luke, Mario Mancini. They took a little snippet of one of our shows. I don't know if you guys seen the Vice documentary the other night.
No, but they spent. Actually, you're talking about it. He sent about to me today. The guy from Vice called me up and he asked me what I thought of the round table, the one I've already been in. The territories, the round table, and he says now you got dirt on a person we want to talk about. So I'm going to get one of the guys to call you up to get more dirt on that person. Hey, I can't know. I love the guy, Marty Jannetty. But there's so much dirt on Marty, and that he used to over your way when we were doing England and Ireland and Scotland. He'd go AWOL. We'd be one night and then he'd go out and party, and then we wouldn't see him for the rest of the tour. And the office funny part is, the office had his bloody passport. They kept the passports when you're on the road, and I'd always wondered how did they get Marty home? A week would be home. 3 days later, Marty would be in the fucking dressing room, just like nothing happened.
We got a good Marty story in this book too.
Yeah, excellent. Is there anything you want to share, or do you want to save it for the book, or give us a teaser maybe?
Well, it deals with college kids, GHB, and the Ultimate Warrior with some hair clippers.
Jesus Christ! I think that's a seller. That's a seller right there.
It's one of the flights from hell, from Rio.
Okay.
From Rio. Rio. What state's Rio in?
What state?
Or you mean country?
Town. Huh?
Oh, Brazil. No, Rio de Janeiro. No.
No. I'm talking about in the States. There's the gambling town. What's the gambling town?
Oh, you talking about Reno, Nevada?
Yeah, Nevada. From there to Dallas. That was the flight. This was one of the flights from hell. Reno, Nevada to Dallas.
And do you know what the The funny thing about it is that Marty wouldn't even care what you're saying anyway.
No,
To Vice TV.
That was a 5 hours. No, he wasn't the only one involved too. Shawn Michaels and Queen Cherie. You know, Cherie Martel. They were the three.
Yeah. And then the Warrior came down and did a little of his own.
Did the job. I don't tell. Warrior came down and did the job. But,
Okay.
It was a 5 hour trip.
Yeah. What was he like, Luke, the Warrior? Because you hear kind of contrasting reports about him all the time that he was.
You know, I knew him as before he became the Ultimate Warrior. I knew him when he was with Sting, and they were called. I forget what they were called. What were they called now?
Oh, I can't remember. I remember the two of them
Rock
together.
and the Blade Runners.
The Blade Runners, and boy, they were terrible. You know, they were trained by a well-known guy on the West Coast who trained a lot of guys, but these were two bodybuilders. You know, the Warrior only worried about his body, even in WWF. That's what he was there for. You know, to work, get paid to work out, and you know, in his body. He didn't care so much about the wrestling.
Yeah, I'll give you another clip on them. We've even got a story of them back when they were the Blade Runners about Sting getting his head dunked in a toilet.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they were terrible. Sting was a much better worker. You know, he learned the business properly. The Warrior, he was lucky that Vince loved bodybuilders. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been booked anywhere. You know, he loved bodybuilders, and that was it. So he got the push.
Yeah, I see. Like, you worked a lot of house shows with the tag team of Yokozuna and Owen Hart, which was kind of it seemed like an odd pairing at the time. Do you have any stories about working with those two guys? And obviously, people speak very highly of Owen.
Owen and no, they were the final, the last year in our business, working for WWF. That's when they were teamed together.
Yeah.
As a lot, you know. No, this was earlier on. Yeah. Anyhow, and that it was sad. And actually, I'm the one that got Yokozuna booked over in England for Brian Dixon, and that's where he deceased. And that you know, that was sad.
Yeah. Are you still wrestling to this day?
I am, mate, and yep, I've been in the business for 7 decades, and I'm still in the ring. As Wikipedia says, I'm the second oldest in the world. The great Kochika is the oldest. He's 79. He's still working in the ring, but he owns a promotion and works in tags and 6-mans. I still do singles. Yeah.
What's your opinion on working single matches as opposed to tag matches? Is there any that you prefer throughout your career, or do you just like a mix of both?
I prefer working tags than that. But, you know, Butch and me, we knew each other in and out. And, you know, we didn't have to talk to each other. You know what I mean? These kids, they put with me today, you know, they want to do all these crazy moves. They don't want to get the fans involved. They just want to do their spot after spot after spot. And I explained to them, you know, you wonder why you don't get good pops? Because you don't involve the fans.
And back to the book for a minute then again. What's the reception been like for you guys so far from the book?
Oh, it's fantastic. I know since we initially, if you've heard of it before, we initially did a Kickstarter to help kind of get word out about the book, allow some people to get some early reception. And I want to say we did like 900% funding on the initial Kickstarter, which was really, really good. We launched on Amazon about a month and a half ago. And ever since we've launched, we've been, pretty continuously within the top 20, 25 books. I think last I looked this morning, we were ranked number 10 of wrestling autobiographies, which is a pretty big feat when you consider there's a lot of books out there that are put out by the WWE and such. And we're beating them to the punch in a lot of sales. And the feedback has been great. We're 5-star rated book. People are loving the stories. They're loving the memories. And like Luke himself said, we kind of did it a little bit differently than some other wrestling books, because rather than just go match after match after match, which we do touch on matches, we try and give people really a lot of the background stories about what was happening in the different territories, what was happening, as they were traveling through Asia and through Canada and through South America. And then, of course, when they got to the WWE. But one of the concerns I think some initial people had was they didn't just want to read a book about the Bushwhackers, because a lot of those guys, grew up with the sheep herders, or they grew up with the Kiwis. Well, I can assure you the book is probably about 75% Kiwis and sheep herders. The Bushwhackers was just a part of their career. But they were world famous before they ever stepped foot in a WWF ring.
Yeah. And kind of when you touched on WWE writing books, I think a lot of people kind of have reservations of buying books from a big company because they're always going to kind of put their own spin on it, and it might lose a bit of personal touch. Whereas you guys are working just together, and you can put really what you want in the book. I've heard of them. I've heard of them making books for people or with people, and then you'd hand them a book 600 pages, and they'd say, "No, I want it 300."
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, one of the compliments I've had, not only on this one, but on some of the, biographical comics I did for some of the wrestlers, is when I write these books, I do literally talk to the guys. So when I write it how they talk to me. So one of the best compliments I ever have received is that the books sound like the wrestlers are talking. And they can tell that it's written by a wrestling fan, not a person who has no idea what wrestling is all about, just trying to spit out a book. So I think it's easier for fans and even wrestlers and people in the business to connect with these books, because it really sounds like you're talking to Luke and Butch.
Yeah. Luke, I've got a question about the Royal Rumble. Remember in 1991 where they done the quick elimination and things like that? Was there ever a reason, or did they tell you exactly what was going to happen that time? I know the record has since been broken, but this is a two-part question, so I'll just leave that bit with you at the start.
Yeah, mate, when they come and presented that to me, and it was Pat Patterson, and God bless him, what a brain he had. He was one that formed the Royal Rumble. That was his idea, and that. But they said, march out to the ring, get Earthquake to pick you up when you get up on the apron, take you across the other ring, put you out, and just keep going, marching. And that was played right up to 2 years ago, and that. From 90, what was that, 92? Was that 92
91.
or 91? Huh?
91.
91. That was played right up to 2 years ago, pre-Royal Rumble. And it pissed me off when they stopped playing it, because they had people still, people still remember that. Are you the guy that marched in and marched out? You know what I mean? Of course, they had Santino Marella do it, but a bit different. I was the original, you know what I mean? And people remember. I still get people, remember, and they call me up too, and they say, "We've got a Royal Rumble. Would you do this for us? Come in and do the same thing you did in WWE."
Mm-hmm.
So it's well remembered especially around the wrestling circuit.
Yeah, see, it's not remembered as the quick elimination. It's remembered as a memorable moment. That's the magic in it, really.
The character was the action, the character.
Yeah,
it wasn't the time. The time helped at the time because they said, "Whoa, he didn't even do anything in the ring." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was it. But that that kept me featured for so long.
Yeah. The second part of that question is: it's December now. You're still wrestling. It's January next month. If they called you to do the Royal Rumble next month, WWE, would you do it? Not specifically that segment, but would you go back into like a Rumble match? Would you like to?
I sure would, mate. And in January I'm 76. You know what I mean? So I'd love to do that.
Would that make you the oldest participant in Rumble history?
Yes,
surely. I think they need to make it happen.
Yeah, that makes me, I know Dory went over to Japan, I don't know how many years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and then he did a match. I think it's on television. It's scary to watch.
Yeah.
Have you seen that, John?
Yeah, I have. I think he actually did that at the Funking Conservatory here in Ocala, about an hour from me.
No, he went to Japan. The one he
Did he
did
go
in
to Japan? I thought the guy came here and they did it at his school.
Oh, did they?
I think so. I've seen it though. It is, and I like Dory, but it was a little hard to watch. It kind of looked like me coming home at about 3 o'clock in the morning.
After a few pints, that's what we say over here.
Especially if you've been in the pub, out in the pubs in Ireland. Hey John, they hammer it. They're like Kiwis. They hammer it there.
My wife and I came so close when COVID hit. We had my first ever trip booked to Ireland, and then and we had the plane tickets, everything ready to go, but they weren't letting us leave without being quarantined for 2 weeks. And then literally, I think the day before but I couldn't get my money back for the flight. The day before we were to leave, the EU said Americans couldn't go over. I finally got my money back, but I still haven't gone to Ireland.
Yeah, thank God all that bullshit is over. We won't get into that tonight.
Yeah, exactly. My wife's a burn, so we wanted to check it out.
Morris.
Yep.
Which part are you? The Catholic end or the Protestant end?
I'm the Catholic end. But I'm not really a religious person. But yeah, I guess I would be from a Catholic family. I'm just out to Dublin, yeah.
You're still doing. You're in the currency. What's it called now? The euro currency.
Euro. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other end is British currency.
Yeah, it's crazy. Up the road.
I've gone through that checkpoint, Charlie, many times where they came in and searched us. That was heavy.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know what we have in common though is from New Zealand and Ireland, we can handle our drink better than the British.
Yes. And I'm going to say it too, mate. You've got a better rugby team than,
Yeah.
Ireland beats England, beats Scotland, beats Wales. Ireland's got a better rugby team.
Yeah, for a small country, we have a very good rugby team. We've only a population of about 3.5 million here to 4, so we've done okay.
That's the same as New Zealand, mate.
Yeah, but you guys are built on rugby.
And you've had our coaches coaching in your country and managing too from New Zealand,
and it shows.
Yeah. And Luke probably won't talk about it, but Luke was he probably could have been a world-class rugby player himself if he'd stuck with it.
Yeah, it's in the book as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Tony, I had Tony Gurria on there a couple of weeks ago, and he was the same.
Yeah. Bush played right up to he started wrestling. I finished well before rugby, but Bush was still playing, right up to then when he started wrestling.
Yep.
Yeah. When was the last time yourself and Butch saw each other in person?
218. I was over there for a tour, and Butch was in my corner.
Excellent. So is he planning on maybe coming back stateside? Are you guys going to try and get back together, even for appearances or anything?
He was supposed to come in 220. The virus, we had 26 shows, 26 gigs around the country, and then 221, the COVID again, and then New Zealand was the last country opened in the world about 4 months ago.
It was very strict there, yeah.
Straight after the COVID opened up, as soon as they opened the country up, he got COVID.
Oh, fuck.
And he got it really heavy. It really, he's been sick from staph infection, and he nearly died twice from it. And this bloody COVID hit him and knocked the shit out of him. You know what I mean?
So he's probably got. Go ahead.
Sorry. See, he was supposed to come this year. I'm not sorry. He was supposed to come in the start of March 2023, and we had all the gigs again set up around the country. And I spoke to him the other day, and he says he doesn't think his health's up to it. He said that COVID knocked the shit out of him. Yeah.
That's a real shame.
Yeah, because we've never done a tour in the States. When we were together, WWE, and then afterwards, and that there was no conventions, and wrestlers weren't doing Comic Cons. till
Yeah.
till the 2000 era, and Butch left in 2002 to go home. So he never did any signings around. The only time we signed photos was at halftime at the wrestling shows. You know what I mean? Independent wrestling shows. We never did any conventions, sports venues, none of that.
Yeah, and the convention world is absolutely huge over there. Obviously, you know as well, John. Like,
Yes.
what's it like?
Hey, it's huge in your country because I've got a guy who runs throughout Scotland, Ireland, UK, and runs the Europe from England.
Yeah, the Comic Con. He does it, I think, in Belfast, doesn't he?
Yeah, the
I've
guy
seen
now, he does the big show in Liverpool every year after WrestleMania, and I think it's so you want to wrestle, something to do.
For the love of wrestling,
Yes,
Monopoly events.
Andrew.
Yeah, I don't know him personally, but I might be actually at the For the Love of Wrestling next April because I do bit of DJing work in my spare time, and I might be doing like an after party over there.
Okay,
Possibly, it's been talked
I'll
about.
see you there then, Morris.
Oh, you're going to be there, yeah?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Um, Going back to the wrestling then for a second, obviously the WWE Hall of Fame is like it's a huge thing for people. How much did it mean to you, Luke, or how significant was that moment, kind of getting a bit of appreciation for your time there?
When they called me up and they said about it, I said, about bloody time.
Do you know what? That is exactly. I had Tony Garea on the other night, and I said, Tony, you know, there was talks about him going into the Hall of Fame, and he said to me, "It's about bloody time I do."
Yeah, Tony's a good guy.
Yeah,
Love Tony. We had some of his first matches with him.
excellent.
Not our first matches, his first matches.
Did you know him before going to America, before
Oh
WWE?
yes, in New Zealand.
Yeah, excellent.
I started in '62. Butch
Yeah,
started in '66. I worked all around New Zealand, and when Butch started, we worked all around New Zealand. But I worked up in Auckland, where Tony was before Butch even started.
mm.
Well, we just did a show with Tony a couple of years ago, that CWF Fan Fest over in just outside of Tampa.
Excellent.
He was there.
Tony's got, since he's finished with WWF, the last 3 years, he finished in 212, 213, but the last 3 years, he's actually gone on the road and gone to quite a few signings.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice to do that, but it's also like the convention world. It's a nice way for you guys to all meet up with each other. You know, every so often you could meet in different towns and cities and see people you haven't seen.
Morris, we're never at a convention where there's Kiwis. And this is the first time there was myself, Tony Garea, and Barbara
Goodish.
Barbara Goodish, Bruiser Brody's wife. She's
Yeah.
a Kiwi.
Yeah, Tony mentioned her.
Yeah, she was there.
Excellent.
3 Kiwis at one show. I think it was a bit too much.
Luke, I have to ask you, I ask everyone, any memories of working with himself, Mr. Vince Jr.? Everyone's got a story about Vince.
Yeah, mate. They all knock him. I could never knock him. Because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
Yeah.
NWA, with the Crockett Center, with the NWA office, we were known as wrestlers. When you go to WWF, that changes. You become worldwide celebrities.
Yeah, and entertainers, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the big difference.
Yeah. Did you ever see him angry?
I've seen him a bit nasty. No, well, he's called the boys a few times. There's been a bit of a problem on the road, and instead of flying it on the end of the tour, every 15 days we'd go home for 3 days. He instead of going straight home, he'd fly us all to Connecticut, and then we have to go to a meeting in the hotel we stayed in. He would come, and the boardroom and lay out hey guys, blah 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 blah. This situation happened. I don't want it to happen again. You know what I mean? But you have everyone there for that.
Yeah, yeah. Just kind of keeping everyone in line as best as he could.
Yeah, yeah.
But I always look at like people talk about mad stories from wrestling in the 80s and the early 90s and whatever, but I think the whole world, like pop culture, was the same. Like the rock and roll lifestyle. You guys were on the road all the time. There's bands touring all the time, and it's just the era that stuff happened in, really, isn't it? Like what's perceived as crazy today was probably normal in the 80s and 90s. You know, because it's a different world we're
Exactly.
living in.
You know, mate, the ribs we played on each other, or, you know, especially guys who came into a territory, this is territorial days before WWF, and they thought
Yeah,
they were sure their shit didn't stink, and that they were the ones that got ribs and that. And the ribs, if we played any of those ribs on the kids today, you know, the kids would be running home and we wouldn't see them again. You know what I mean?
they'd
The
be
ribs
bringing you
were
to
heavy,
court.
though. Ribs were pretty heavy those days.
Yeah. Any particular one that stands out for you that you have played? What's the best one that you've played on someone? That's what I want to know.
Mate, I never played any of the ribs. You know
No.
what I mean? I've been sort of there with them all. But some of the most notorious ribs happened in the Heart territory. I guess you've heard this before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you heard that? In the Stampede Wrestling. Boy, back in the day when Dean was alive, that was a small one of the oldest, apart from Smith, and that they were heavy ribs. Brett was too young for this. You know, there was Bruce, and there was Dean and Smith. They used to let Smith run the Sunday towns. Well, you've heard so many stories about Smith. You can imagine how those towns were. The ribs we played.
I think Butch used to rib you a bit though, didn't he?
Yeah, but they were just, you know, simple things,
Yeah.
minor things. They weren't ribs compared to these ribs, mate.
No, I know, but like pushing ice machines in front of your hotel door, or
Yeah, no,
shoving you in a room and screaming.
There's a room full of people, and we'd go into the room, and he'd get me to go first. He would push me in, scream, and then close the door so everyone look around and they just see me there. Yeah, that's one of his favorite ones. Come to mind, though. Here's one. Two great midgets, Skylo Low and Little Beaver. Do you ever hear of them?
No.
These were the greatest. These midgets were circus midgets. They could walk
Okay.
along the top rope. You watch midget matches today, they do pardon me, they do them the same as men. The men do. You know, these midgets work midget matches. You know, cartoon stuff.
Yeah.
But they were acrobatic, could walk along the top rope, and there's a lot of stuff. Okay. It's summertime. Summertime, when the school's out, promoters usually bring in midgets or girls, you know. So Stu Hart has brought two girls in from Moolah, and we've got two midgets, the two that I have mentioned, who were old then, you know what I mean? These guys I'm talking about now, 1972, 73, and they were in the 50s.
Yeah.
Little Beaver was gay, and you know, and what did I say? The other one,
Sky Lolo.
bald head, but he was a master. Anyhow, the actual high spot is the baby-faced midget does something smart on the heel, and the heel chases him around the ring.
Yeah.
And a tag. Well, usually you bring one of the girls in, or a guy, either situation. But this was a mixed tag with girl and a midget. So the girl comes into the ring and she opens her legs up, and the babyface wrestler goes through her legs as he's going around in circles, and then the midget, the heel, pulls up and puts a brake on right in front of her. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
scared of her. Now, those days, the woman wore one-piece bathing suits. You know, like you went to the swimming bath or the beach with, right?
Yeah.
And this night, this woman, I can't remember going back. I don't want to. I've got names in my head, but I don't want to quote who it was.
Okay.
Anyhow, she was wearing a beige one piece. They do the spot. Skylar, Little Beaver does something to Skylar Low. Skylar runs around the ring. She steps in. Little Beaver goes between her legs. Instead of stopping, Skylar Low went between her legs. He had a blade in his hand and nicked
Oh,
her. He nicked her right up the top of the thigh by the bottom of the trunks. You know, the one piece.
yeah.
Now, because the girl was working in the ring and her blood pressure was up because she was all hyped up, the blood started pumping into the beige swimming suits, and she looked like she had a period.
Oh,
Now
Jesus Christ.
all the fans were pointing at her and going like this in the
Oh
ring.
my
The
God.
Butch and me were in the ring. Butch and me were watching from the back of the dressing room, and the Hearts. This is one of Smith's ribs, and that anyhow. We finish the show. We drive back to Calgary, and I get a phone call straight through to my hotel room, which is adjacent to Butcher's, and it was Stu on the phone. The girls had called up Moolah. They worked for Moolah, the great Moolah.
Yep.
Remember her? She
Yep.
booked all the girls. They'd called up Moolah. Moolah called Stu, and Stu's calling me. What the fuck's going on? Yeah, but I knew he loved ribs, but he wouldn't make out. And he did. Because his kids were doing ribs all the time, and
Yeah.
and I said, I can't remember what I said. This was 1973, but I still remember getting the phone call. So the boys must have gone home, and Stu knew that we were traveling with some of the boys. So some of his sons, because we used to travel with them, that he'd called in straight away, called me straight away. Huh. Yeah,
Brilliant.
that's pretty heavy a rib. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't
Instead
think you
of
get away with it these days, would you?
No, God.
oh no, the girl would go crying,
The feminists will be after you.
the guy would be fired. It'd be too much. You know what I mean? Out of the day.
And it's like that's a great story there, and like people can expect stories like that from your book because as you said, like a lot of the stuff is outside the ring, and that just seems to be where people's interests are these days. I suppose people kind of know so much now about the wrestling business that they didn't back in the 80s and 90s that now they want to kind of peel back the curtain and hear stories from back in the day, don't they?
Yeah, now a good friend of mine was released from WWE about 6 months or 3 months ago. He was Vince's right-hand man. They dragged him into the scandal to take the
Johnny.
heat. Johnny, you got it right, Johnny. And now people are ringing him up to book him for conventions, but mainly for Q&As because they want to know the dirt behind the scenes.
And is he going to do it? Is he going to do it?
Oh, but John is a businessman. Butcher me started him in the business. You don't know that, but in the NWA, and that Dusty gave him to us to educate him. And Johnny was a college graduate who had gone on into business programs and all that. That's why he was over with Barber for so long, and then with Vince's right-hand man, because he was a businessman, not a wrestler. Even though he wrestled, he was more of a businessman. You know what I mean?
Do you think that do you think that, sorry, Luke, that he was the fall guy for when shit hit the fan?
Yeah, they mentioned that, the girl went from Vince to him. You know what I mean? He was a fall guy. Anyhow, Johnny will know how. He knows that'll be a great thing for him, Q&As. But Johnny will be smooth because he knows how to talk.
Yeah, yeah.
He won't
And it's
go.
kind of,
He won't. He'll leave a teaser there. He won't go too deep.
yeah, I think a lot of people would love to hear what he has to say, and he's probably kind of maybe biding his time for
Mate,
now, just because shit is still out there, and even with this documentary that came out the other night and stuff like that, it's probably just best let things settle for a while. But I'm sure people would love to hear him speak or him write a book. I'd say he could write 10 books at this point.
yeah, don't forget he was
Get
with
onto it, John.
He was. Don't forget he was with Vince. You know, from 2000, the year of 2000, when he did all the acting on NWA guys, WCW guys, and he came to
Yeah,
Vince in 2000 to 2013, 2012, and then he's been back for 2 years. So he's got 14 or 15 years being right side Vince. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people I've had on the show, and the majority of them don't speak very highly of him, but they probably don't know him like you do, you know?
Mate,
So,
he was the X-Man. You know everything. He was told what to do.
yeah,
He's the one that did all the firing. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And if there's stuff that the boys didn't, you know, heavy stuff to talk to the boys, Vince wouldn't do it. Johnny would have to do all that. They
yeah,
don't realize too, mate. The generation, even some of my generation in the 80s, you know, you can't stay there forever. You have your strong home-based baby faces, and your meal. You got to move the rest of the crew through. You know what I mean? The underneath baby faces, because they're the ones that build up for the heels to get over, and you know, get beaten, but they help build up the heels to work with the main eventers, and the heels they're passing through. You know, they work up the program, then they work with the Hulkster, whoever's on top, and bye bye. You know what I mean? They don't
yeah,
realize you can't be there for good, but they don't.
yeah,
You know, they think that's why John's got a lot of hate, because he had to do the firing and all that.
yeah, yeah. And I think he had Jim Ross doing that for a while as well, didn't he? When Jim Ross was there in the
Yeah, he
company
was
at one point
before
as well.
John. Jimmy
Yeah,
was
yeah,
before
And
John.
Ross was pretty outspoken about that in his book too, about how hard that was.
yeah,
Being
yeah. I'd say those guys have been in some very tricky situations, I think, from that. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Hey, being a booker, I've been a booker. I've been a booker for 14 years. Not that you know about it, but in territorial days, before I went to Vince, and then after Vince, and then I ran IWA in Puerto Rico for 2001 to 2009, and that or 2008 when Victor died. Then I ran the New Brunswick. It's called the Maritimes, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And then I ran a week every month there for about 4 years. You know, that was the summer territory. The rest of the year, rest of the time, 6 months or 7 months of the year, the ice was down in all the arenas. So they weren't big companies, so they couldn't run the building. You know, and Vince, he works in those ice arenas because they put down the wood on top of the ice.
yeah,
Like in
yeah,
those days, in those small territories, they didn't do it, and so they closed down. The territory actually closed down in September and opened again in May.
Mm. Guys, what back to the book again? I know we're here to talk about the book, but we're getting a little bit sidetracked at times. But like, what has been the main kind of split, John, between physical copies and Kindle up to this point?
Oh, it's been, I'd say probably about 99% physical because and this is
Yeah,
a good ad for us. I just this week made it available for pre-order for Kindle. So we're
excellent.
taking pre-orders. If people prefer the Kindle, you can go on and pre-order. And I made it to drop to your Kindles on Christmas morning. So what better way to celebrate with a nice cup of coffee and some good Bushwhacker sheep herder Kiwi stories drop into your Kindle on Christmas morning.
On Christmas
Yeah,
morning.
yeah, that's a. There's a lot of people today. They want to listen to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah. Now
Read
I'm
it
personally,
online. You
yeah.
know, you can read it online or listen to it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's what we are gonna go into that. We are gonna look at potentially doing an audio book down the road. We don't have that yet. Me personally, I'm old school. I like to hold the paper. I like to hold a book in my hand. I like the smell
Yeah.
of a page. But I know, it's as technology progresses, there's a lot of people that like to store all their books into a little piece of machinery and pull it up that way. So we have made it available that way, and I think people will like it that way too. But why not get it on Christmas morning?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
very,
a great little gift there, dropping
Yes.
from Santa Christmas morning.
very great. That was a great idea, John.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luke, yourself, I see do you want to talk to me about your bar?
It's not my bar, mate. It's a friend of mine that I've known for
But you're doing a lot of
10
promotion for it.
12 years. Yeah, that I had a gym on Clearwater Beach right above Hogan's shop. I had
Yeah.
that for 8 years, and then the new landlord from New York bought the plaza the gym was in, and I had another year and a quarter. When that ran out, he whacked my rent up five grand a month but that was just a message to get me out. You know what I mean?
And
He,
what's
he
there
wanted
now?
the, he wanted the bar. He wanted the plaza to be all restaurants and bars. Which now my place, the Japanese restaurant beside me, and the social club beside that, the bar from downstairs called the Brown Boxer. They put a stairway up, and they took over another 10,000 square feet. So that got me out, and I was at home just being a weekend warrior, and the opportunity is a good friend of mine. I just said to him, "You got anything for me to do?" Because I'm home and I decided to come down. Not his main restaurant; it's his second to main. He's got two pizza parlors and two main restaurants, and this one. Was the runner-up restaurant. I went down. I do more or less, PR. I talk to
Yeah.
the people we are, and if there's stuff lying around on tables, I humble myself and clean it up, wipe the tabletop too. I'm not ashamed to do that. And but I crack a chat with everybody, and see they're happy with the food and they're enjoying themselves. And we're the last place on the beach, more or less, to sell food. The bars close at 3. We sell food to 2:30. Now I'm in an area where there's hotels. There's 1,600 rooms within 50 yards from me. Maybe 2,000 rooms within 50 yards to 100 yards from me. All high-rise hotels, and they all. The people who work in these hotels, the staff and that, they come in after they finish work, and people who are in these restaurants and bars, they ask where to go when they're in town, stay in a hotel, and they tell them, great food, and go to Panfilos, and and I promote it all the time, and that's it. But it's more or less it's a late night scene, mate. We have drifters come through. We open at 6, and from 6 to 11, the place never gets packed. It never gets high. You may catch it half full or a quarter full, but come midnight, 12:30, that's when it starts hopping.
Yeah, and you're still there to that time.
I
Do
come
you
home
ever?
at 2:30
Do you
in the morning.
at your age, man, and working at restaurants, still wrestling? Did the R word ever come into your mind? Retirement. Have you ever thought about that?
I laid on the beach with the guys, and all the guys I laid on the beach with, God bless them, are dead. I lived on a beach called Indian Rocks, Indian Shores Beach, which is well known for tourism. It's between St. Pete and Clearwater.
Yeah.
And it's the narrowest piece of land because the intercoastal runs behind it. There's 2 inlets, one down in Johns Pass and one at Clearwater, where you can come in, and this piece of land is a strip. And where I lived there was about 80 yards to 100 yards wide. and the way when we had bad storms, the waves used to come through underneath and go into the water behind me. Crazy.
Yeah, I can honestly say, getting to know Luke, he's probably one of the hardest working people I know, even today. I mean, I'm dragging out of bed. He's already shooting me messages on my phone, wanting to chat because he's ready to go. And that's after getting to bed around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning the night before.
Yeah.
Guys, it could come to a standstill. All of a sudden, it could come to a stop. But I'm doing stuff all the time. You know what I mean?
Just living life like you want to.
Well, I could get more rest because I know I need to get more rest than I do, but I can't. When I wake up to take a slash, if you know what a slash is.
Oh yeah, slash. Yep.
Take a slash.
We use that as well.
The Americans don't know. I had to teach a lot of them what a slash was.
Yeah. Oh, we know it over here. It's a very common word here.
Wanker is too. Anyhow.
Yeah.
I never hear it. You bloody wanker. Anyhow, once I get up for that and it's daylight, I can't get back to sleep. I start thinking of what I got to do.
Guys, we're kind of way over the time I had booked here for today. But what we're going to do, just in closing, just why should people buy this book, and just tell them how different it is from all the other books out there. And then Luke, for yourself, where could people catch you on social media, etc.? And I'll put all the links underneath for the book and the socials anyway. But guys, take it away.
Well, I think people should buy the book because some of our stories they've never heard. There's drugs involved, there's sex,
sold,
and rock and roll.
Sold.
We've been in places, in hoods, locked in rooms. 600 square feet condos while they're shopping out for coke in Panama and Colombia. What? And that's in the book and all that sort of stuff. Who writes about that?
Yeah, like Luke says, it's sex, drugs, rock and roll, but even more important, when you get into it, you'll really get to know Luke and Butch. There's stories in there that'll make you laugh. There's stories in there, honestly, that will make you cry. When you hear some of the heartfelt stuff that they had to go through, because 50 years in the business, there's going to be highs, but there's going to be lows too. So it's going to pull every chord of your emotions. But it's just some fantastic stories about two really, truly amazing, great guys that marched, from a little tiny New Zealand to the top of the industry, and they're still marching today.
Yeah, but that's a fact. People from all over the world, if they want to get in movies, they go to Hollywood. And that, when I started, Morris, we had no television until 88 to 68. And then it would only be on from 3 to 8 o'clock, 5 hours of television till 8. And then, there's we had the wide world of sports at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. I still remember that. And you remember that wide world of sports, right?
Yeah,
I remember that.
But apart from that, no television. We had radio. So the only way to promote it in towns was the poster and the radio or newspaper. You got to the town early in the day to get in the nights, because the night paper used to come out at 4 o'clock. A lot of towns had a morning paper that came out, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and then they had the night one that come out at 4. So you got to the town, try to get there before midday and go to the newspaper and get a story in and get a couple of photos so it'd be on the sports page or the back page of the paper that night. And that's how we promoted the towns.
Yeah.
Crazy, huh? We used to go to the towns at midday too, mate, and walk around in the street because everyone would be out for lunch. And they say, oh, the wrestlers are in town.
Flyers.
Yeah, flyers. You're right, mate. That's how it was. And, mate, so all the fans get this book and read the journey. It's a wild one. And we start off when we really start rocking and rolling. It has me and Butch in living in Singapore and going through the country was having a war. Malaya was Asia, and it was Asia and Malaya. And then all of a sudden, when they got this and they had the treaty, and it was all sold and became Malaysia. But we were driving up there when it was two different names, and we could hear the guns. Da 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 da. Curfew was 5 o'clock. No driver, and then we'd be driving up the jungle, and that after 5, 7 o'clock at night, elephants working the side of the road, bullocks, no machinery, elephants working. The Indian and Asian elephants are small. With the guy sitting in the back, they'd be rolling up the sugar cane, or the bamboo and all that. And the bullocks were pulling the fucking thing with bullock horns digging up the dirt to plant seeds. People don't realize that's how it was in those third world countries.
Yeah. So if people are looking for the book, they can find it anywhere Amazon is online. I know Amazon has stores all over Europe, here in the U.S. and Australia. And if they'd like to get an autographed copy, and correct me if I'm wrong, bushwhackerbrand@gmail.com. They can write Butch or Luke directly, and Luke can hook you up with a nice signed copy for all your
signed copies and ship them out to you. So remember that Bushwhacker brand, and when they spell whacker, it's WHACKER, not WACKER. It's WHACKER.
Silent H.
Silent H.
Yeah, at gmail.com. And my other sites are all Bushwhacker Luke. My Facebook, my Instagram, my Twitter is just Bushwhacker Luke. And my website is bushwhackerluke.net and .com. But I think the .com is down. It's .net.
.net. I'll put all those links underneath. Gentlemen, absolute pleasure to talk to you both today, and happy Christmas to you guys. And
thank you, Marty.
We'll see you again at some point.
Same to you, and have a wonderful New Year too.
Yeah, you have a happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I'll see you in April at the show, Andrew's show in Liverpool.
Excellent.
And